Why does Israel protect the Druze? On the 16th of July, Israeli jets struck deep inside Syria, not to target Iranian proxies or respond to rocket fire, but to defend a vulnerable minority community, the Druze. For many, it was a surprising and dramatic move that defied immediate explanation. Why would Israel risk a cross-border escalation for an Arab population it doesn't even govern? The answer lies in one of the Middle East's most unusual relationships, one that stretches back many decades to the first years of the Israeli state. So, who exactly are the Druze, and what explains this seemingly unlikely partnership? Hello and welcome, I'm James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict and security. International relations is full of unusual and often unlikely relationships. Democratic states support dictatorships, secular powers back religious regimes, and long-standing rivals form tactical partnerships. But while we usually think of state-to-state ties, these can also emerge between countries and various non-state, sub-state and transnational groups. A good example is Israel. Over many decades, it's built a fascinating history of engaging with non-state actors and minority groups to balance against wider regional threats. Within this complex web of diplomacy and strategy, the relationship between Israel and the Druze stands out as one of the more unusual and enduring examples of such ties. At home, it's become a symbolically important partnership between Israel as a Jewish state and an Arab minority community. But while this relationship has long had domestic implications, it's now gained international attention through Israel's actions in Syria. To understand this relationship, we need to understand who exactly the Druze are. Ethnically Arab and Arabic-speaking, the Druze are a small, tightly knit religious community that emerged in Egypt in the early 11th century, combining elements of Shia Islam with other religions and philosophies, including the idea of reincarnation. They've long been seen as heretical by mainstream Muslims and faced centuries of persecution. As a result, they've developed a tradition of secrecy, isolation and pragmatism. Often settling in remote mountainous areas where they could protect themselves, they've long had a history of strategically aligning with dominant powers in order to preserve their security. Today, it's estimated that there are around 1.5 million Druze around the world. While there's a diaspora community with many in the United States, the majority are concentrated in just 3 countries. Most live in Syria, somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000, mainly in the rugged Jabal al-Druze region around Suwayda in the south of the country. Meanwhile, approximately 300,000 to 400,000 live in neighbouring Lebanon, particularly in the Shuf and Mount Lebanon regions. Finally, approximately 130,000 Druze live in Israel, primarily in the Galilee and the Golan Heights areas in the northeast of the country. But just how did Israel become so close to the Druze? Our story begins in 1948 with the partition of Palestine by the United Nations and the creation of the State of Israel. Although the new state was established as a Jewish homeland, it also included several Arab communities. As well as the Palestinians, hundreds of thousands of whom had also been displaced in the process. This also included Sunni Muslim Bedouins, as well as the Druze. While many of Israel's Arab citizens felt alienated from the new state, as a community, the Druze took a different path. Seeing an opportunity to secure their position, they chose to integrate, and in 1956 an agreement was reached allowing Druze men to serve in the Israeli Defense Forces. Today, while Bedouins and Palestinians can in fact volunteer, the Druze are the only Arabic-speaking group subject to compulsory military conscription. And while they once had their own battalion, nowadays Druze soldiers serve in regular combat units as well as in other parts of the IDF, including special forces and intelligence units. Indeed, many have risen to senior ranks, including several generals. At the same time, the Druze have steadily become more integrated into Israeli society, serving in the police and civil service in what is widely seen as a mutually beneficial relationship. For Israel, the Druze are not only viewed as a trusted and reliable minority, but also a useful example of Arab integration. For the Druze, it brings access to state resources, political representation, and social mobility. And while some younger members of the Druze community have started questioning this loyalty, arguing that they face discrimination in many areas, the relationship overall remains strong. But while Israel has developed close ties with its Druze citizens, over the decades the relationship has also gone beyond the country's borders. Notably, it's also engaged with the Lebanese Druze. There, the Druze community has long been a significant political force, particularly under the leadership of the Jumblat family and the Progressive Socialist Party. And although Israel's main allies during the 15-year civil war were the Maronite Christians, there were also moments of cooperation with the Druze. This was particularly the case when their interests aligned, such as resisting Syrian influence or confronting Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed Shia militia. But as with many alliances forged during the war, these relationships were often fragile and shaped by Lebanon's constantly shifting political landscape, rather than formed from any deep ties between the two. Meanwhile, the situation in Syria has always been very different. Given the deep enmity between Syria and Israel, the Syrian Druze have traditionally kept their distance from Israel, fearful of being branded traitors. For example, and in contrast to the Druze who came under Israeli rule in 1948, many of the 20,000 or so Druze in the Golan Heights, which was seized by Israel from Syria in 1967, have refused to take Israeli citizenship, with many continuing to see themselves as primarily Syrian. And even during the Syrian civil war, they remained cautious. While Israel may have kept an eye on the situation, and reports suggested that it provided some degree of aid, the Syrian Druze leadership was careful to avoid open contact. Caught between Islamist rebels and tribal militias, many Druze aligned themselves with the ruling Assad regime for protection. But with the regime now gone, the Druze find themselves more vulnerable than ever. And it's this that's brought Israel into the picture. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please give it a like and perhaps subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks a lot. And now back to the video. In July 2025, violent clashes broke out in the Suwayda province between Druze militias and Sunni Bedouin tribesmen. Allegedly sparked by a kidnapping, it quickly spiralled out of control. However, while the new Syrian government deployed troops to restore order, this only made things worse as the Druze felt that the Sunni Muslim administration would side with the Bedouins. As the death toll mounted and more people became displaced, Israel stepped in. On the 16th of July, Israeli jets carried out a series of airstrikes. In addition to hitting Syrian troops, vehicles and command centres around Suwayda, Israel also struck military targets around the Syrian capital, Damascus. Since then, the mutual recriminations have begun, while Syria condemned the strikes as acts of aggression, accusing Israel of violating its sovereignty and escalating tensions. Israeli officials argued that the operation was a humanitarian effort designed to prevent a potential massacre. Meanwhile, although a temporary ceasefire brokered by the United States and several Arab states has led to a partial withdrawal of Syrian troops from the area, the situation remains tense. While the Druze are now back in control of Suwayda, the fighting has come at a heavy price, with an estimated 1,100 dead and 130,000 displaced. Meanwhile, the threat of further violence looms large as the Bedouins insist that they may yet take up arms again, which in turn could threaten further Israeli strikes. So, just how should we interpret Israel's actions? Was it really about protecting the Druze, or is there more to it? In truth, it's likely a result of a combination of factors. First and foremost, there's undoubtedly a clear strategic logic behind the strikes. While officially described as a humanitarian mission, the operation fits within Israel's long-term objective of maintaining a buffer zone around the Golan Heights. Israel has always sought to prevent Iranian-backed militias and other hostile forces from gaining a foothold in southern Syria, and the Druze, who are generally suspicious of both Sunni Islamist groups as well as the government in Damascus, make a useful buffer. And it's for this reason that the Druze, who are generally suspicious of both Sunni Islamist groups as well as the new Damascus government, make for useful allies. Supporting them helps secure Israel's northern frontier. But at the same time, it seems that the intervention also plays an important role at home. By acting to protect the Druze in Syria, Israel sends a powerful message to its own Druze citizens. Their loyalty matters, and the state will stand by them even beyond its borders. That message is particularly important now as signs of discontent have begun to emerge within the community. Likewise, the move is also likely to resonate with broader Israeli society, where the Druze are respected for their military service and citizenship. For the government, the strikes offer a way to reinforce national unity and underscore its commitment to loyal minorities, including Arabs. But all this said, the intervention may also have a significant downside. Critics point out the potential adverse effect for the Druze in Syria. Having managed to avoid being seen as Israeli collaborators for many decades, this could now place them in even greater danger. So, does this mark the start of a new phase in relations between Israel and the Druze, especially in Syria? Of course, at this point, it's hard to say. The relationship between Israel and the Druze has never been based on ideology or shared ethnic or religious ties. It's been grounded in pragmatism, mutual interest, and, for the Druze, survival. But while Israeli support may be welcome at the moment, the real question is whether it will translate into long-term protection, especially as the community could now be seen as Israeli proxies. Will Israel maintain this security? Then again, a long-term role may be exactly what Israel intended. The strikes may have been just as much about creating a pretext for a prolonged presence in southern Syria as it was about preventing bloodshed and appealing to Israeli Druze sentiment. Having stepped in, Israel might not be able to step out again, at least without risking the Syrian Druze, with all the effects this will have on Israeli Druze opinion. But all this remains to be seen. In the meantime, whatever happens, the recent airstrikes have focused international attention on one of the Middle East's most unusual and enduring partnerships. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find helpful. Thanks so much, and see you in the next one.